we're gonna do something new. I'm calling it Transformers Tuesdays. Check it out. Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name's Chris, and this is Northgarden Comics. And as the name indicates, I'm primarily a comic book channel. I am a comic book collector and reader. I love comic books. I've been collecting and reading comic books for a little over 30 years. And recently I've been thinking I wanted to expand out in some of my content, do something a little bit new, maybe do some spotlight things, a little bit more in depth. And I got to thinking that, one of those consistent threads and themes throughout my entire history as a comic book collector has been my love, I'll say my first love, which is for Transformers. I was ripe for the picking when the franchise started back in 1984. I was 11, just about 12 years old. And, so they had toys, they had cartoon, they had the animated movie, they had the comic book. And you tell a kid that age that there are warring alien robots that have been fighting a war for millions of years, and now their war has come to Earth, and these robots are able to transform into vehicles and weapons and dinosaurs and a number of other things, and, well, I really didn't have a choice. And so I succumbed gladly to the love and addiction that is Transformers. And like I said, I got started with the cartoon, and for those of you old enough to remember VCRs, I faithfully recorded that as a kid and probably had 15 or so VHS tapes filled with those shows. And Mom, please forgive me for the various things I'm sure I recorded over in the course of doing so. But I had dozens, hundreds of the toys and then comic books. And they were the title, the franchise, the toy line that got me into comic books to begin with. And they've been with me ever since, even when I kind of dipped out of comics for a while, like a lot of people do. And they were the thing that brought me back to comics in 2002, when Dreamwave rebooted Transformers comics in the 21st century, and just recently did a video where I kind of went through all of that Dreamwave era of comic books, but then have been following ever since. And I thought I wanted to do a series maybe that would focus more on Transformers. So this is episode 1 of that endeavor, and I'm calling it Transformers Tuesdays. It's a little bit daring, not because of the Transformers piece, but the Tuesdays piece. We'll see. I don't know if it'll be every Tuesday, but I will try to make sure that it is on Tuesday when I post a video that will be more specifically focused on something Transformers related. Now, given that I'm a comic book collector and that is my primary thing that I collect, it'll still probably be heavy on the comics, but maybe we'll look at an IDW collected edition that I recently picked up, or we'll look at what are the solicitations for the new comics that are coming out, or we'll look back, like I just mentioned, the Dreamwave era. We'll look back at some of the Marvel stuff. But I also have many of the toys, and I have a couple projects that I've got in mind with some of my old toys that I'll talk about in another video, and I'm hoping that this can be somewhat of a dialogue, because I have things to share with you, but I hope to learn from you as well, because there's a lot of expertise out there in the Transformers fan community. So hoping to tap into that, and we can kind of have this exchange and dialogue. So that's what I'm hoping to accomplish in this. In this first video, I've got a book I want to show you. So it's not a comic book, but it's not a toy either. There are 2 books here, and we're going to really just focus on one of them. The first one is this one here. It's called Beast Wars Transformers Unofficial Guide. This is something I got, it's probably about 20 years old now. And then the one that I want to focus more closely on is this one right here, The Unofficial Guide to Transformers, the 1980s through the 1990s. And in just a minute, we're gonna swing the camera around, and we're gonna take a closer look at this book here. But I do want to pause first and say, if you like content like this, maybe it's comic book related content or particular to Transformers Tuesdays, if you like Transformers related content, please take just a minute and hit that subscribe button. And as you watch, if you see something you like, give it a thumbs up. And please let me know your thoughts and questions down below. I'll also say that YouTube has a funny way of kind of pigeonholing channels. And so given that I've been on YouTube for a little over a year now, I'm pretty much pigeonholed as a back issue comic haul channel or a new issue comic haul channel. And so if you like Transformers, or if you know someone who's a Transformers fan, please consider sharing this video on your favorite social media platform. Otherwise, YouTube is just to ignore this thing and it's gonna sit there and collect virtual dust. Now that we got some of that housekeeping stuff out of the way, let me swing this camera around and we'll take a closer look at this book. Okay, so here's the book. It's called The Unofficial Guide to Transformers, 1980s through 1990s, with price guide, a Schiffer book for collectors, and revised and expanded second edition. I don't remember where this was from. I received this as a gift along with that Beast Wars Transformers guide. And like I said, it must have been about 20 years ago that I got this. And what I love about this is that it may not have every single toy in it. It's got a good number of them, but it's a great pictorial reference. And the author, J.E. Alvarez, he does a great job of even giving some of the history of the toys and each year, for example, what was new in 1985, 1986, etc. As you go down, as they expanded the toy lines and which teams and lines of toys did we get that year. So it does a great job of being a good reference. It is unofficial, and he does have that disclaimer in there just in the title, and inside he explains that a little bit more. And really just comes from his love of Transformers, and it really feels and functions like a very handy on-the-shelf scrapbook reference to all those toys. And so as I flip through this, even now 30 plus years later, it just flashes me back to all those hours spent in my room setting up my Transformers toys on bookshelves and transforming them and putting spotlights on them and dreaming about the ones that I still needed to get and couldn't wait to get and add to my collection. So you can see how it goes through the different chapters. Like I said, starts with, you know, the earliest characters, and then starts to evolve and add to the lineup. Getting down here, you got your Headmasters and your Power Masters and Pretenders. It does dip into Beast Wars, and then I like how he ends here with some other neat stuff. So we'll get there as we go. But he does, like I said, he goes through and talks a little about why he did this book. Shows you some things in package, some things that are just raw or out of box. You see some of the variants even here, where you've got the yellow Bumblebee in the package, but then the red image. And it's interesting, I was just rereading some of this history before I did this video, and the reason for some of those variants early on was because they had gotten the license from Takara to produce these toys, and some of the initial runs of toys were just odds and ends of toys that they had sitting around. And so there were variations in some of those things, in the colors and the molds and things like that. So that's where you got some of those variants. As a kid, you never knew that. You never knew the business side of it. They were just, a way for you to have your favorite characters. And I remember hunting, boy, how I hunted for Optimus Prime as a kid. I have a Megatron, but I don't remember where I got it. I may have gotten it, trading with one of my friends or something like that back then. I don't have the box anymore for that. But we'll just kind of flip through here and see some of these. This is one of those variants that I talked about. They, I guess, refer to this as Bumble Jumper. So it's yellow, but you can see it's a little bit more of a squared off mold. I don't know, almost reminds you, what was it, a Datsun or something like that maybe, as opposed to the Volkswagen Bug. But you got the little mini ones. I remember my brother was probably the first. He was a little younger than me. He was the first one to have Transformers toys. I think he had Brawn, was one of the first ones he had, and they were super cool. And then you get into the cassettes here. I remember having a Hound. I mean, as you're watching, what was your first Transformer? Do you remember your first toy? If you were a Gen Xer like me, did you have one of these early ones? Or if you're younger, what iteration of Transformers got you hooked? And what was your first toy? Or what was your first comic or first TV show? I remember having a Trailbreaker. Again, back then, when you're a little kid, you're not a collector necessarily. You're looking to play with these things. And I think I got a Trailbreaker through a trade as well from a friend. Or maybe a friend was getting rid of it and didn't want it, so gave it to me. So I have one of those. There's your Megatron. And of course, the bot himself, Optimus Prime. And he's been redone so many times. I will say one of the old man, you know, my kids sometimes joke and call me maybe they're not joking, call me a crabby old man. One of the things that I'll say, when I was young, you wanted Optimus Prime, that was Optimus Prime. Once you bought him, you had him and you were done. But then over the years, you start to see, and you get older, you start to see more and more the business side of things. And now, you know, in order to have Optimus Prime, there's 27 different Optimus Primes of different sizes and versions. And I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgia talking, but it seemed like a simpler time. And it felt more achievable to get them all as well. Pokemon thought they were the first to say, gotta catch them all. Nah, I think it was Transformers for me. It was for me, where I wanted them all. I never had any of these that had the mini spies that he refers to here. I don't remember seeing those at all. And then you get in, now we start to expand out some of these characters. Constructicons, obviously hugely popular from then till now. And I know there are people who collect the toys and they do kind of customizations of the toys. As an adult now, I guess I never thought of myself being someone who would be into those customizations. But when I think back to when I had the Constructicons, I do recall actually painting them because it was just green plastic all around. And so I had silver paint that I did. I think I did Mixmaster's little mix barrel there, or the treads and the hook and things like that. So there were different elements that I painted silver. So look at that. Even at, you know, a preteen, a tween or an early teenager, I was customizing my action figures and my Transformers. And you get your Dinobots. Omega Supreme was cool, battery powered as well, so he would go around the track. Jetfire was definitely coveted, and I liked Shockwave as well because he had, you know, the batteries and would light up and make sounds. Here's those minicons. Oh, not minicons, minicars, the mini spies. That's them transformed there, and their vehicle modes here. There's Devastator. I remember having, did I have both of these, Top Spin and Twin Twist? And then the Insecticons. I think I got one or more of the Insecticons on a trade as well. Triple Changers blew my mind at the time. It's a robot, a train, and a space shuttle. It's crazy. And the more advanced, the Deluxe Insecticons. And again, I never knew at the time, but it did seem odd to me even then. Roadbuster and Whirl, just for the look and feel of the other Transformers, these guys just didn't seem to fit in. And I think they were a different toy line that were licensed in. Oh yeah, Roadbuster and Whirl were licensed to Hasbro from another company. So that would explain why they looked different. Perceptor's always been one of my favorite characters. Love him in the animated movie, even though it's a very minor role that he plays there. But then I really liked him in the IDW version of Transformers early on, when I think he was more of a sniper. Was he part of the Wreckers too at one point? I remember these joints on Soundwave were not the best. He would get loose and he would kind of bend over very easily. And even here, early on, look at that. You do have specialty versions of Optimus Prime, even though you got the Pepsi version. Aerial bots, Stunticons. I remember them being introduced in the cartoons where the Decepticons were like, you know, the Autobots are always beating us on the road. We need something to combat them. And they came out with the Stunticons, and the Autobots were thinking, you know, those Decepticons are always beating us in the air. If we only had some jets to help us. And then it just cancels each other out. I remember getting Hot Rod at a Toys R Us back in New Jersey where I grew up. And I think my Hot Rod actually came without the stickers. It either came without the stickers or I screwed up the stickers when I was applying them, and I was so frustrated with myself for screwing up the stickers. That's probably the more likely story. Metroplex seems so awesome, and he was huge at the time. And I love that you could play with the little vehicles. The mini cars could, you know, work with the city there. That was super cool. Superion. Loved Superion. Still love Superion. And Menasor. Doesn't seem to have very good visual range, though. You can sneak up on him pretty easily or come at him from the sides. He doesn't have much peripheral vision. But then Bruticus, pretty tough there. Starscream's creation, right? Defensor, and then the Autobot cassettes, and then Ratbat there. Then we start to get into more of the movie. We're up at like 1986 now, because you've got Optimus Prime introduced, Wreck-Gar, more triple changers, and then Cup and Blur, Hot Rod there from the movie. Preda King was pretty awesome as a combiner when he came out, because he was so beefy compared to some of the other combiners. When you look back at how far they came, when you compare, for example, Devastator to Preda King, and there's no comparison when you compare to today, but that was pretty impressive at the time. You got Gnaw, Cyclonus, still love Cyclonus. Loved him in the Transformers More Than Meets the Eye comic title. Written by James Roberts, Alex Milne doing art, fantastic. Tripticon. Galvatron, another nice battery-powered guy there making sound. Ultra Magnus, that's one where the toy definitely differed from his character in the show in terms of how he transformed and having that little, you know, the white version of an Optimus cab. Skylinks, so cool that he walked. All right, then this starts to get into, like, you know, in the cartoon we were getting into, they went to, is it Nebulon? And you had the Headmasters and Targetmasters that were introduced, but we have more combiners. The Technobots and Computron. Scorponok. Now, Fort Max, I never had him as a toy. That was a coveted toy. I don't remember how much it was then, but it would probably seem cheap compared to getting one today. Terrorcons. And there's Computron. Remember these guys too. The Duocons, where you would, like, the helicopter would come in and he would land on top of the car, and then they would snap up and they combine to form one robot. In the recent IDW limited series Transformers 84 Secrets and Lies, Punch Counterpunch, the double spy or double agent, he serves as the narrator for that series as he went back and forth between the Autobots and the Decepticons. Or these guys had buttons on them that you could press and they would sparks would fly out of their mouths. Six Shot, another impressive toy there with 6 alt modes. And then you've got the Targetmaster versions of these guys. More of the Headmasters. Just great, like I said, to have these collected in pictorial form. It's like a scrapbook for your toys. And one of the reasons that that's so significant to me, I still have all of my toys from when I was a kid. And like I said, I have dozens, if not, you know, in the hundreds of toys going all the way back to the beginning. But sadly, my family and I had a house fire back in 2004. And the fire was in the room where I had all my shelves and all of them set up. And so some of them were destroyed. The top row where it was the hottest, They, you know, I had some that partially melted or mostly melted, and you know, I just see them as, you know, the fallen war heroes. I haven't gotten rid of them. And then even the ones that were lower down, if they didn't melt, the soot from the fire stuck to them, so they would get, some of them would get this tackiness. And then again, I'm dating myself with this reference, but if you remember like Shrinky Dinks, so little plastic things you would put in the oven and they would shrink in the heat and become hard. It's like the plastic of the Transformers actually changed when they went through that extreme heat of the fire. They became more brittle, so they're not easy to transform anymore, or I'm afraid I'm going to break them. So I'll still get them out and I'll show you them in a future video, but they largely spend their time in a series of large tubs in storage right now. But that's why a book like this is so nice to have, because it's the next best thing to having them, is being able to look back and to see pictures of those original toys. I remember getting these guys. When they started to get into the Pretenders, that's where it started to stretch a little bit away from the original concept. I had these guys too. Monstructor. And then when it finally got, oh, these are the Pretender Classics. I don't think I ever had Grimlock, but when it got into, I think they're in here, but when it got into the Action Masters and they weren't even transforming anymore, oh, they do Action Masters second assortment. So there'll be pictures. That's when you say, okay, well, it's not really a Transformer anymore. It's not even transforming. But that's about when my initial wave of collecting dropped off. I didn't have any of these either. Are they calling this Generation 2? It looks like a lot of the same. Oh, you started getting here. No, these like the Micromasters. Yeah, I did have some of the teams of Micromasters and the different sets, and they would have the bases that would transform as well. I did have some of those. Oh, maybe he doesn't have any pictures of the Action Masters. But now we're getting into Generation 2 here. And, you know, Megatron is a tank. It's this, I don't know. Are you, as you're watching, were you of the age that this is where you got hooked into Transformers? This was kind of more towards the end. Here's that, you got the Constructicons again, but now they're just a different color scheme. I wasn't really actively collecting the toys at this point. Again, same thing, just different colors. Or several of the combiners. And I was reading the Transformers Generation 2 cartoon comic book, but I wasn't collecting the toys. Yeah, so they don't show the Action Masters. I did have a couple of those. But then you get into the Beast Wars, which was like the mid-90s, and we can talk about it in another video. But the Beast Wars show, looking back on it, of course, the CGI compared to today there's really no comparison to what the technology allows us to do today. But at the time, I really enjoyed it. And I know there's another YouTuber out there, the Dude Without Fear. We've talked a little bit about this. He loved Beast Wars too, and that was his introduction to Transformers. I really liked it. I liked the character development. I liked the stories. I liked how each episode somewhat told a self-contained story, but then there were these longer forms, plot threads that they wove throughout the seasons, and how it even tied into the original Gen 1 continuity and universe. I thought that was pretty cool. I know there will be those of you who didn't like it, but that's okay. Not every version of this toy line and comic book and TV shows is going to appeal to everybody, but hopefully along the way they do something that will appeal to the original fans to keep them going, but then also give it a freshness and a newness that hooks a new generation to keep the franchise going. I feel like I had this Starscream, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I've just looked at this picture so many times I feel like I had it, and I don't know. This is the crabby old man again. That's just not my Starscream. He's just different. So, but he was pretty big. Starscream stood close to a foot tall. Machine Wars Transformers. I really don't know if there was a story they built out around that or not, but not familiar with it. There is a book I know that focuses on the Generation 1 box art, and that would be fantastic to have. A nice hardcover collected edition of that artwork, because that, again, flashes me back to childhood. Loved seeing that artwork on the back of the boxes. Now we get into some other things. There were so many different, licenses and things out there, things that you could slap Transformers on. I just watched Hasbro Pulse Fan First live stream on YouTube, and I think one of the product designers was on, and I think he showed the Canadian version of the original, the VHS version of the animated movie. Puzzles, carrying cases. I didn't have an official carrying case. I had a toolbox, like a tackle box, I should say, a fishing tackle box that I used to put all of their weapons and things in. And then you get into some of the comics. Yeah, G.I. Joe, Headmasters, the encyclopedia version, Generation 2. I may have passed it already, but I saw in here the different versions of the movie. It was probably on that page with the Canadian version of the VHS, but it showed the VHS of the US version, and I remember having that. I don't know if I do anymore. I'm going to have to dig through my stuff and see if I can find it. But all these different things that you could get with Transformers. Anybody out there have a Transformers lunchbox at any point? I don't think I did. Oh, here's some of the VHS. I recorded most of mine. I never bought them, but I recorded them on tapes every day through all the seasons so I could have all the episodes. But there's that VHS. I remember having it. That was my first copy of the movie. And we'll do a video coming up here later this year because they're doing the 35th anniversary release of the movie. And I gotta say, I have a couple different versions already of the movie. Do I have it on Blu-ray? I may not have it on Blu-ray, so I might need to get the 4K or the steel case version that's going on pre-release next week or this week. I guess depending on when you're watching this. And then he kind of ends up here again with Fortress Maximus. So, anybody out there have this book? Did you, or are there books, are there books today that do something similar, hardcover, paperback, that do a nice pictorial review? Let me know down in the comments. All right, that's going to do it for me, and apparently for my co-host as well. That's Daisy, one of our dogs there. She's been there the whole time, but has been napping, and now right at the end has decided to wake up and walk around. But as you watch, did you see something that you liked? Go ahead, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, share it out to all your friends. Let me know down in the comments, what was it that got you hooked on Transformers to begin with? Are you like me, Gen Xer that got into them way back in the 80s when they first came out as toys and a cartoon, things like that? Or was it a more recent show or video game or comic book or toy line that got you hooked? I would love to hear about it down in the comments. Now, if you're not quite ready for the YouTube fun to stop, I have hand-selected a couple other Transformers-related videos here for you to check out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.